If you want to be straight on, that's that one. We don't have the sword. We'll show them that.
Try that, Charles.
Tom D'Antoni. Stan Kenton Project.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell me when you're ready.
Tell me when you're ready.
We're ready, I think.
Are we ready?
You ready, Art?
Happy Jazz Festival, everybody. How you doing? My name is Tom D'Antoni with Word and Music News. We're happy to, again, be the official online media sponsor for the festival, and we are podcasting all of the jazz conversations. This is our third year. The last 2 years of jazz conversations are online, wordandmusicnews.com, and including one from an amazing one from yesterday, Barry Harris. You can't hear it, believe it. But today, we have a special jazz conversation, and I'm going to introduce our guest. I will turn you over to, is this KMHD Day in here or what? There's me, there's Art, and there's Shawn Kirkeby.
Thank you very much. Welcome to this jazz conversation. This is part of Portland Jazz Festival's education outreach schedule for jazz conversations and panel discussions. It takes place from February 14th through the 24th. And if you need any information, you should visit pdxjazz.com. There's a link to that at Art's website as well, artabrams.org. It is a pleasure to be here, and we're going to start with the Stan Kenton Project. And I'd just like to lay a little groundwork. This is information that you see in the web pages and the press releases. The Stan Kenton Orchestra was a spawning ground for an abundance of great jazz artists, such as Frank Rosalino, Buddy Childers, Childers, Bud Shank, Maynard Ferguson, and many more. Oh, the name pronunciation is rich, isn't it? Stan opened the door to young arrangers like Bill Holman, Bill Russo, and of course Pete Rugolo, who shaped Stan's early band. Stan was very selective in his choice of vocalists, such as Anita O'Day, June Christie, and Chris Connor. The program tomorrow night will cover many of the musical landmarks that made the Stan Kenton name universal from the late 40s through the 70s, including the Pete Rugolo, June Christie collaborations. Eager Beavers, Stompin' at the Savoy, Send in the Clowns, and some other surprises. Many of the charts were given to my guest here on stage by Mr. Rugolo, and Art has said it will be an honor to perform the actual charts with all the notations written in for the individual musicians that were in Stan's band at the time. My guest, as many of you know, has been a rock star, or a rock, at KMHD for about 3 decades, in the Sunday morning position, in fact, with his program, The Jazz.
I'm only 29 years of age.
Yeah. It's funny how that cycles like that, doesn't it? Recently, after KMHD moved to OPB, he created and hosts Jukebox Saturday Night, which airs weekly on, of course, Saturdays. He has been tireless in his support of jazz in Portland on KMHD, of course, throughout the community, helping to entertain and educate. Arguably, over the long career he has had, he's done a lot of what Stan did. Spawned great musicians, trained the next generations, opened doors, and invited great vocalists to perform, all of which will be on display tomorrow night, and we will talk about all that. Toward the end of this, we will open up this conversation to your questions, so if you have some, write them down as we go. Please welcome, won't you, Mr. Art Abrams.
Thank you.
I'm actually not checking text or email here. This is just, how I work these days. An MC's worst nightmare is a handful of paper, so we don't do that these days. Let's talk about the spawning ground of the Stan Kenton Orchestra. Just take it point by point. Give me your impressions. Frank Rosalino.
Well, Crazy Frank, who committed suicide, as you know if you read the books, which is true. But one of the great trombonists of all time, only closely akin to Carl Fontana in style. But a great trombonist, and much legacy with the Stan Kenton Orchestra and his own group after that Stan's band. Besides the instrumentalists, Stan opened up the door to arrangers that would not have been heard ever. Some would have made it down the line, like Bob Gredinger, if you're familiar with the City of Glass with most people do not like to listen to. It's creative material that is based on dissonance in 4 parts. And Stan did it live 3 times in public, which failed everywhere. But he had an affinity for young, creative, experimental arrangers. And Bob, his material has never been heard if it wasn't for Stan Kenton. You can look up in, I think, the internet or some of the books, Bob Gressinger, who died at a very young age also. Hank Levy, who did some of the modern things for Stan. Pete Rugolo, who was more akin. Pete was probably the Billy State horn of Stan Kenton, like Billy was to Duke Ellington. Stanley and he had a great feeling for the same kind of material, so he kind of shaped the early band, 40, 45, 46, 47. And the arrangement, besides the great musicians he opened doors to, Bud Shank was with the early band, Stan Getz was with the early band, and all the trombones that made the band sound. The arrangers were all part of it.
Talk about Pete Rugolo and his arrangements. We'll just jump around in his arrangements. Talk about those. I heard you talking today. If you were listening to KMHD all today, he was working with Lynn Derrick here this afternoon on Bright Moments. You were talking about the charts that Pete. How did you meet Pete? He was an immigrant.
Well,
in this country.
he came up to the swing machine around 1990. I'm not sure the date, 1991, 92, 93. Only because he knew Robert Hicks, a wonderful vocalist, Portland-based vocalist who may be in town now. Usually spends time in LA or Tokyo. And he knew Pete. He knew Bob and I had our affinity for Stan, growing him up, and we did only Pete Rugolo's music, not Stan's music. The music Pete wrote for Stan's band and collaborated with him. And it was a great evening. And we had Becky Kilgore on that one too, and she did the June Christie parts. And he was just a very, at that time, if you remember the last one, I think, was the last one that he on television with the little man that walked and the lady with the purse. Pete walked that slow. He was pretty much up in age. I'm not sure what it was at that time. And very gracious, and he directly conducted our band in all his material. And he had perfect ear pitch. During rehearsal, one of the trumpet players was playing something that was not in tune. It was written the way the trumpet player was playing it, but it was written wrong. So Pete caught it immediately, slowly walked over to the gentleman, our trumpet player, and it was corrected. But he had perfect pitch up to his age. I'm not sure what his age was at the time. 82. A very quiet man. And actually, we had trouble getting his charts, because when he wrote for Stan Kenton, he wrote everything down and gave it to Stan. He got kind of paid for it, and he never had copies. He never thought anybody would want to hear his music generations later. So when we came up to direct us, he had we could not get the music from North Texas State, where all the charts was donated to. And Robert tried, couldn't get him. I called, Neil Slater, couldn't get him. Only when Pete called him, told him who he was able to release him. When the concert was over, he graciously gave them all to me. So I'm honored. We'll be playing those charts, which are all written for June Christie, which Rebecca Kilgore will be singing.
And Pete came to this country, I think it was about 1920 when he got here. But what?
From Italy.
Yeah. What was the reason? What was the impetus for these great arrangers and musicians into the Stan Kenton band? They came out of a tradition of music in the 40s, but all these people seem to be pretty kind of itching to do something else. And talk about Stan Kenton and his orchestra and the edginess that exists in that music.
First of all, Stan Kenton was a gambler, only on himself. He gambled everything. He lost a lot, gained stature with musicians, but Stan had there was no easy time for Stan. I think, had he been alive, he died at I think around 67. He was pretty young. A long way past that. And I think he lived to see his music become part of the school system, because the college bands were playing his material, where the mass audience didn't like it. He had the worst reviews of any band leader ever. And the sad part of it, they were all by critics who were well known. Barry Ulinoff from Metronome, George Fraser from Metronome, and Dave Dexter, I think, wrote for Downbeat magazine. And I brought some quotes because I want to quote it right. This is what was said about Stan. They evidently did not listen to the body of his work. And right here.
Pete Rugolo, by the way, he did music in Hollywood much, in addition, over the later years, he did music to things like Leave It to Beaver, Thriller, The Fugitive, Run for Your Life, Felony Squad, The Challengers, The Bold Ones. Those are all things you remember, but he did a lot of work in Hollywood. Yeah.
Let me get you a few things that have been wrong. In a lot of magazines, it would show Stan Kenton as being born February 19th, 1912. Incorrect. Wichita, Kansas Bureau of Records shows Stan being born on December the 15th, 1911. And I think the newer biography of Stan will show that. Let me read some of the critique that I don't know if I could have handled from George Fraser of Metronome, who totally hated Stan, made no bones about it. And I quote, called Stan Kenton band neither fish nor fowl, but pretty foul. Plays too loud, has no exciting solos. This is quote. You can get those. I think this was 1950 or 49 review of the Metro. Intonation is deficient. It lacks light and shade, and it never relaxes. By all rights, it should be ready for the trash can. That's pretty brutal. This one, it actually made Stan kind of happy. Let me start. The biggest criticism was the band didn't swing. This still, even when Eager Beaver became one of the biggest sellers for Capitol Records and Tampico. And for Dave Dexter, critic for Downbeat magazine, the Stan Kenton band does not swing as freely as Jimmy Lunsford or Count Basie. Well, Stan didn't mind this because he always wanted to be different. So the fact that he was different than those bands made him happy. That didn't bother him at all. But another, Barry Ulanoff, a major writer for Downbeat, had compared the Kenton sound to, and I quote, a movie man grunting under the weight of the grand piano. So these are the kind of things. And I talked to Dick Shear, who was my close friend, lead trombone for the last 14 years of the band. While Stan was with it, he left a little bit before Stan died. He took over the band. He was like a father to Dick Shear. Said that he was hurt by the, you look at not intimidated because he didn't show it on gigs. He was intimidated by the reviews and he felt very bad. He never talked back about bad things about the critics at all. He just said, they just don't seem to understand what I'm trying to do. And, but he was hurt, always hurt by his criticisms.
What was Stan's upbringing? Where did he come from? Why was he so patient?
Well,
what was his attitude?
Actually, the name Stanley was the name that was used all the time. And it didn't challenge it to why he became Stan Kenton by everybody. He took classical lessons on the piano. He was really into jazz and pop music with a lot of the bands. And his first job, good job that paid well, was in Hollywood, California, in a place called Earl Carroll's Theater. Anybody from California will know that's no longer there. Great dinner and dining place. In fact, when I was going to Hollywood High School, we had our prom there, which is a big thing. Louis Prima and Petey was playing there. That was for our prom. He wanted to leave the band so badly that he was unhappy being soloist in a house. He was a house pianist there. So he gave notice, and the owner said, well, I think you're making a bad move. You don't want to leave the band. And this was in 1940. 1940, when he left Earl Carroll's, went on the road, put the band together. So the owner of Earl Carroll said that I'll get a temporary pianist, and in a year, if you haven't made it, come on back, and the job will be open for you. It's pretty good. It was like above scale at the time. I have no idea what it was, but he was very plush and very secure. But he had the vision. He wanted his band. It took a year and a half, and he wound up opening across the street for Earl Carroll's with his big band at the Hollywood Palladium, which was the newest thing in Hollywood. Going to Great Palladium, and which had all the new sound system. So he made it there. And on the marquee, they put Stan Kenton instead of Stanley Kenton. And from then on, it was Stan Kenton.
He liked it.
He liked it.
Yeah. What gave him his inspiration for composing? Where did that come from?
I'm studying, and I can't think of professor, something about that, I'm not sure. I'll show you, I was on the West Coast jazz and study with this gentleman who had classical beginnings and taught them classical type sound. So when Stan came out with concerto concerto and all concertos, which we will be playing tomorrow night, and collaboration with the classical sounds, it wasn't a surprise to us that knew his background because it was in there.
Talk about Bill Holman a little bit. He is an arranger that was trained by Lenny Tristano, and he's actually credited for the brass arrangements on the Fifth Dimension's The Age of Aquarius.
That's right.
But he's
After Kim.
Yeah, right. He brings a lot of very creative classical kind of energy to that.
Well, he does, and Stan and him hit heads all the time. Bill Holman was a swing style writer. He wasn't into concertized music, because he did later stuff. If you do now, he's into some of that new kind of music. But Stan wanted concertized music. Stan wanted to be absolutely. Stan was obsessed. His obsession was being different than any other band, and he revered Charlie Barnett. He revered Duke Ellington, all the big bands, but he wanted to be different. And so sometimes obsessed so much for it that he experimented just in the case of being different. Bill Holman had knocked heads because he wasn't happy with Bill Holman's charts at the beginning. He didn't want swinging material, but eventually he got into it like Stumping at Savoy, which we'll be doing tomorrow night also. And he never did quite meet Stan's subjective idea about concertized, but they worked together beautifully. And because of Bill Holman, Stan had some swinging things.
Did he play saxophone in the band? Is that what he
Yeah.
So he played and composed.
And controls, right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story talking about swing. This is a true story. Buddy Shoulders, who I knew, told me that Stan, and we all knew Stan traveled by car with a partner sometimes. Sometimes with his wife, sometimes by himself. And once in a while he'll go with the bus on one night. So one time when it was close to the just about the Innovations Orchestra that he had. When they go on the road, they're not arranging anymore. They go for 2 or 3 months on the road. They were playing the same music night after night after night after night. And Stan said, guys, this is a true story. I won't say any end, but this is true. He said, we've got to find some new music. I've got to find some new kind of music to play. And Al Porcino, who was his lead trumpeter, one of the great trumpet players in jazz, came from the swing era thing. He was playing Stan's music. He didn't like it, but he was playing with him. So from the back of the bus, he said, if you're looking for new music, Stan, why don't you play swing? And everybody in the bus fell apart. They kept talking, and Stan, there was no answer yet. And Buddy said, he never did give an answer on that. But it's not that Stan didn't like swing music, he just wanted to be different. If other bands were playing swing, he wanted something else. And his music lives on today. And I'll tell you another story quick about the City of Glass, which is not liked by even Stan. It was a trade-off. To get Kaplan did not want to record Bob Reperture's piece. Stan wanted his stuff to be heard, the Stan stuff to be heard. And the trade-off, as the story goes, and that we don't know if it's true or not, the trade-off was Stan doing a recording with Tex Ritter, which was a bomb. Stan didn't want to do it. And it's hard to find a copy of it. I tried to get a copy of it, and I guess it's a collector's item now, but he back at Tex Ritter, the cowboy singer, John Ritter's dad, who did we've got to find some new music. I've got to find some new kind of music to play. And Al Porcino, who was his lead trumpeter, one of the great trumpet players in jazz, came from the swing era thing. He was playing Stan's music. He didn't like it, but he was playing with him. So from the back of the bus, he said, if you're looking for new music, Stan, why don't you play swing? And everybody in the bus fell apart. They kept talking, and there was no answer yet. And Buddy said, he never did give an answer on that. But it's not that Stan didn't like swing music, he just wanted to be different. If other bands were playing swing, he wanted something else. And his music lives on today. And I'll tell you another story quick about the City of Glass, which is not liked by even Stan. It was a trade-off. To get Kaplan did not want to record Bob Reperture's piece. Stan wanted his stuff to be heard, the Stan stuff to be heard. And the trade-off, as the story goes, and that we don't know if it's true or not, the trade-off was Stan doing a recording with Tex Ritter, which was a bomb. Stan didn't want to do it, and it's hard to find a copy of it. I tried to get a copy of it, and I guess it's a collector's item now, but he got Tex Ritter, the cowboy singer, John Ritter's dad, who did the TV series, and that was a trade-off for releasing City of Glass. Well, it was one of the worst sellers to Capitol Records, but Stan has it on records. That's how that happened.
Stan obviously was just born with this in his head. Talk a little bit about your connections to that orchestra. You mentioned Buddy, and how you, because you're not just covering the music of Stan Kenton. You come from that part of the world. You come from Los Angeles. You know some of these people. Connect yourself.
My brother, who was 10 years older than me at the time, took me to the Rendezvous Ballroom. I don't know what the age of it there, but he got me in when I was 11 years old. And the Rendezvous Ballroom, and this was the first date of the Stan Kenton Orchestra. It was some kind of holiday, either Memorial Weekend or 4th of July or something. And we were all out of school. And my brother took me with him and his friends to see the Stan Kenton Orchestra. And it was so different. It was based on staccato sounds. And if you get some of the early CP record transcriptions, actually, if you get the deck recorded by Stan, that's the sound he had. And he had a vocalist named Kay, and I don't know anything more about it. This was before Nito Day, or before Duke Christie, Chris Carter. And the band was so different, just knocking out. He had 3 trumpets only. I think the total amount of musicians was 14. And which, as years went on, expanded to 42 for the Innovations Orchestra, where he lost his shirt, pretty much went broke. But the sound got me, and I became a fan. That was it. And the next time I saw him was when my folks who were dancers, not professional dancers, just dancers, took me with them to a place called the Casa Manana in Culver City. They belonged to an organization that had a dance band was hired. Still not known very well. Saw him again, and the band was even had added another trumpet. The band was getting. At that time, we were playing Ears and Beaver. He was released on the Capitol Records label. Then the third time I saw him was at the Hollywood Palladium, and he already had Jim Christie with him. And the band had been even longer built up. Now I said 2 trombones, it was 4 trombones. And now there was 5 trumpets. So this was the full band at that time. And if you like Stan Kenton, you're a fanatic. So if you think you're not, and you do love the Kenton's music, you're a fanatic, and I'm proud to be one. So that's where that all happened from. He lost the fans along the way when he got into his very introverted music, but I stayed with it, and a lot of us did, and a lot of it may not apply to the public, but he's left a legacy.
And tomorrow night, actually, just by way of information, tomorrow night's show is in the Scottish Rite Auditorium. It holds 600 people. There's only about 40 seats left. So it's going to be a dynamic, rich, full program. Music's going to be
the guys know that.
Yeah. Talk about the guys. Stan Kenton had a lot of people coming in and out of the orchestra. Some stayed for just a couple of years. They couldn't take the road. So they and we're talking about some of the singers here.
A lot of it because of the road. It was grueling. If you were part of the Stan Kenton band, I wish I had the talent. I was too young, but I wish I'd had the talent to be part of the band. I ultimately wouldn't have had that talent. But Buddy Childers joined at 16 unofficially and had to come back and finish school. And then Stan put him on a record as a lead trumpet player when he was about 17, almost 18. He stayed with the band for a long time. But the musicians would leave because of the grueling part of being on the road. And with a Kent band, it's not just playing. You would rehearse all through the afternoon. It's not just a couple hours rehearsal. You rehearse every day with the kind of music they had to play and still play a job at night, which was, at that time, standard was 4-hour jobs. Today it's pretty much 3 hours or less. Definitely, union-wise, it was 4 hours for a dance. And because Stan he never cared for dances. He hated playing for dances. But the concession he worked with was that when he played in concert or dance for people, he would say at the first part of it, almost all the dances, if you allow me to play our concert material, I promise you, the best damn dance music you've ever heard. And that's what he did. And he gave you the best music. That's why.
Talk about keeping a band together, your own experience. I mean, ask, making phone calls, Yvonne deserves a great deal of credit. We should probably give her a hand. Talk about, making calls to musicians, attracting a musician to the band. Over the years, your band has gone through a variety of configurations, but you've been really, and I know that consistency is a great deal of this, but you've been very, very focused on your band, and it has remained a name that we know and recognize. And talk about what it takes to create a band.
Well,
I mean, there aren't a lot of them in town.
Oh, of course, I wish I could say I had the dedication that Stan had, because if I did that, we wouldn't be just playing dance music. I have visions too, but I know you can't keep a band together today. You need an audience out there. And we have a great dance book, a fantastic dance book. With a lot of the Lenny Niehaus chart that he wrote for Stan, plus some written for us in our CDs. But you have to have a band with integrity. You have to have, especially a band that works together as a team. And it sounds corny, but do this one for the Gipper, the old sports thing. You can have great soloists in the band, have a bad rhythm section, and you have no band. And vice versa. Fortunately, I've been lucky with a lot of bands I've had. This band, I wouldn't have attempted to do the Kitten tribute. But this band's an all-star band. We're all all-stars. Paul Maggio used to be a field band, came back in and lost 2 trumpet players. Lost them right after our recording session when we were getting booked for this thing. And we already booked to do this with Don Lukoff, who talked about it doing the Kitten tribute. And losing 2 dynamic trumpet players scared me, so I called my old friend Paul Maggio back in, Matt Carr back in. And all these individuals are very dedicated musicians to the Portland area. So one works with 5 guys named Mo. He plays a completely different kind of music. And then Dave Parker is a teacher
at University of Portland.
Right, and he teaches music, jazz music, and semi-classical band music. And he does a lot of arrangements for our band. But my key people all understand Kent music. You cannot play Kent music by sitting in front of it. Just say, here's some Stan Kent charts, sit down, play the music. No matter how good you are, you can be great readers, you're just going to play notes. It's a concept. I have to say this in the best terminology of the word. Stan Kent music is a cult. It's a cult music. You have to feel it, and then you can play it. And the people that Stan got were people recommended by other guys in the band that said, well, this one will be able to cut it. And he was fortunate to get all the guys that got in. Some of them couldn't take the road. That's the reason why they left. Not so much the music, but because of the road. Something like that. Back to that again. And I've been very fortunate to have a very dedicated bunch of musicians, because there's no money in big band today, anywhere. It's the economy, but our guys are all combo players, and they get jobs where they can. And when they come in to do this, it was a very dedicated rehearsal session for this. Not as many rehearsals as we wanted, but I'm happy with our last rehearsal, and it'll be heard tomorrow night in front of everybody. You can't lie about music. One thing about music, you cannot lie. The music comes out, it's there in front of you. You can't cheat on it. It either comes out of the horn or it's not there.
Talk about some of the horn players that you have information about in terms of Ferguson and in the Kenton band, and why that developed, because it's an intense. It feels to me almost like the equivalent of an electric guitar in jazz. It's intense. It's brass, and lots of them is really a statement.
In the case of Maynard Ferguson, he came on the scene. He kind of spoiled it for all the trumpet players, because around that time, even with Kenton's band before that, things were written a couple of things about the staff. And, I remember when I was at LACC and Perez Prado came here with the new sound, the Mambo sound, Maestro Perez Prado. And so he came to LACC to recruit musicians. Well, I went for the audition. I didn't make it. everything written was written APA, which means an octave up. And then if you go an octave above that, fine. So you heard the Frescado Mambo releases, Mambo number 5 and stuff that he brought to this country. Very few people from LACC that cut the book, but he did get recruits from Los Angeles City College. With Maynard, when he came on the scene, and Stan Kinney used him, Trump players hated him because everything started being written for him in this particular band and other bands. A lot of people don't know that Maynard also worked for the Jimmy Dorsey band, doing some pyrotechnics up above, and the Charlie Barnett band. And I think one of the major things to do with Charlie Barnett's band when I was still coming out of school was the thing, Jerome Kern, I think all the things are all written by Jerome Kern, was released on a purple label, Capitol Records. For those of you that may not understand what 78s are, or somebody said that may know what the 78 RPM is.
Those doorstops?
Right, that's it.
We got a couple of those at home.
Those are definitely collector's items. And I know I went to Sears or I lived near and picked it up. I think it was the records were 35 cents for a 78. And it was Charlie Barnett's band with featuring Maynard Ferguson. Well, the story in that, the week it was released, was withdrawn a week later by the Jerome Kern estate, who said they would sue Capitol if it wasn't released. Well, it's been released, that was years ago, and it's been released in many issues on CD by Capitol. Maynard took all the things you are, took it to another level, and I guess the Jerome Kern estate didn't like. I thought it's fantastic. If you get a chance to get it, go to the Capitol label. It's the release now under the Charlie Barnett called the Capitol Sessions. It's on CD now, but they were able to tell Capitol they didn't want to release it. It's blazing Maynard at its very, very best, but trumpet players hated it because everything was starting to be written for Maynard's type of sound, and very few players could cut it. The Kitten band got that kind of people in.
Just a couple more questions before we leave the big band, your band. How did you make the transition? What made you, first of all, what trumpeter, I think, that did you try to imitate over the years? And the second part, when and why did you make the transition from performing to creating a band? What made you create a band?
Let's go back to why I picked the trumpet. In the families, at my time, if you have a young son or pretty much a young son, well, they either want you to be a lawyer, a doctor, fireman, and kids want to be cops.
I don't think that's changed, actually.
I wanted to be a cop, actually. But what happened, I said we're non-professional dancers, but we used to dance, and I guess at times they could get a babysitter for me or didn't trust me because I was pretty active. And so they would take me with them. At that time, fortunately, it's not too big now for kids. You could bring in a youngster and came with parents. The Hollywood Palladium was one such ballroom. They took me to this time, and already I was a fan of Stan Kenton. Harry James was playing there. This is the guy I have to blame for causing me to really go into music. He stood there with a beautiful horn and played Fleet to the Goon, Trumpet Blues, and all the great things that he did in the 40s. And his vocalist was a young lady by the name of Helen Forrest. But that wasn't the point. It was Harry standing there, Billy Tall, just blowing that trumpet. And on the way home that night, I said to my dad, I'd like to play trumpet. And, just like that, no father was going to put money out on a trumpet for a kid that they just played for a couple of weeks. But my uncle was second celloist with the Hollywood Bowl Symphony, which was one of the impressive symphonies of the time, Hollywood, the big thing. And he believed me. We went downtown LA, which was loaded with hot shops, got me a beat up old Pontiac. He said, prove to your dad that you're serious. And it took me about a month or two. Proved to my dad. We went out and we got what I wanted, which was a Harry James model Silver, which I still have to this day. I play another horn now, but that was the horn. So I got the Harry James model, and I took lessons, and that was it. Didn't care about leading a band, just wanted to be a sideman. But when I became a sideman, then you get the issue of, you're under the domain of the leader of the band. Sometimes I think my guys think the same thing with me. But I was restricted to really, at that time, very heavy swing, which was swing. And I took solo parts, but you're restricted to do what the leader wants you to do.
How about what years are these? What year is this you're talking about? Restricted to swing.
Well, see,
If you don't mind me asking.
swing was still hanging over into the late 40s. But the band started breaking up in the 50s. All the big bands were falling apart because of the economy. And I think Duke Ellington had the last band that was together, and then even he disbanded for a while. Harry disbanded his band. One of the big bands that hung on as long as they could was the Woody Herman band, with the great herd from 45, 46, 47, 48, Bill Harris, Serge Challow, Stan Gus was in that band, Connie Cadoli, Shorty Rogers, who you could see had played with that particular band. But I wanted a swing band, but with more modern type swing arrangements. And so eventually I put together a teenage band, and then didn't do so well, and became a side band again. And then I had a small group in California called the Swing Machine. So when eventually forces, a long story would take hours to tell you, brought me up here to Portland, which I didn't want to leave Hollywood at all, but something in the family involving my wife and her mother that was getting very ill, brought her up to Portland. I was still in Hollywood, and the changes happened. That definitely happened when we came up here, which was a bad point for me because in Hollywood, at that time, things never closed. I moved to Estacada, so let me tell you about Estacada. At 9 o'clock, things are locking up. In Hollywood, you go out at 2 in the morning, you got a place to go to see jam sessions. I mean, it was a different era. Shelly Man had this club at Sunset Boulevard, Coinga, right below Hollywood Boulevard. You go to 12. They closed at that time because of the liquor law. They would lock up at 1 o'clock. And if you're so lucky and you want to stay, musicians coming from elsewhere, getting off their jobs, would come in there and they would jam at 4 or 5 in the morning. So can you imagine the life for a young guy there? It was wonderful. So coming up here to Portland and Estacada, my bags were packed for a good year. I was ready to go back there. But then a call came out from KMAC, which was a new jazz station. And my wife pushed me to go up there and said, this would make you want to do something. And I had no idea I wanted to be a DJ at all. But I went up there and that started something, and I liked it. And Tom Casella, who was the station manager at the time, saw my background and said, could you put together a band to play fundraisers for this non-commercial station? That's how it all started. I got musicians, some, bless their hearts, some of the best ones in the world. No, some of the worst ones I answered that ad in the Oregonian. Went through about 10 trombone players, 30 trumpet players, saxophone players. Then, when Mr. McVeigh from Monday Committee called and said, why don't you get some educators in your band, teachers that are semi-retired from playing and might want to do this. And that's what I did. Got some educators in, Rick Tibbetts, from the very beginning of the band is there. And they told me who to get. And then we started getting some younger players in. One thing led to another. We were playing stock charts. Our first job, I can tell you, right now, I don't want to go away from Stan Kenton because that's what it's all about. But our first job was at Elks Lodge in Milwaukee. And let me tell you, nothing against the Elks, but they taught you about beats. Can you play 120 beats to the left? I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know, we're playing swing music. And we had 9 charts for a 3-hour job. 9 charts, 3 Glenn Miller charts. I had been with Jerry Gray's band, and when Jerry Gray, this is some of his band, because he didn't want to play Miller music, he wanted to play his own music. I got a bunch of charts from him, Miller. So we had Tuxedo Junction, Straight of Curls, so we played In the Mood about 4 times that night to make things last. We faked things in between. We had trumpets come up and blow some solos. We got through that by our britches. And so we decided, well, we got to put something together. So we got arrangers. To make a long story short, we got better musicians in, and to the date of what I have now. And that's how that happened.
Tomorrow night you have Rebecca Kilburn singing
Oh.
with you, and let's move on. Let's talk about the vocalists in Stan Kenton's band. But first, I just want to, really point out that Rebecca is she has perfect pitch. She is a real classic, great singer in the tradition of Ella Fitzgerald. Really, she just nails it. And the other singers that we're going to talk about here now, Chris Connor. Everyone remembers that great 1958 image of Anita O'Day in court.
Let me pick up from where Shawn was talking. I'd like to talk about Rebecca. In the old days, the word diva is a beautiful word. It means divine. It means when you talk about a female vocalist, diva is the best. Today, sadly, it's closely aligned to prima donna, which means argumentative, temperamental, the B word, okay? Musicians don't like to work. Those are the kind of vocalists musicians can't stand. First of all, most musicians do not like to work with vocalists because they want to do instrumental things. That's the reason. Rebecca Kilgore is a gem. She's like one of the boys. She's a pro. She's a musician. Very, very easy to work with. So the best context of the word diva, she's a diva, a great diva. We're pleased to have her with us because she understands the Duke Christie material. There's a few numbers she'll hear where the background is very contrapuntal, and June even had trouble with it. Her husband, Bob Cooper, wrote a lot of we're not getting into the real intricate material like Willow Week for Me, or the blues stuff that she did with Dan, which had great background. She's not even close to the melody line that June had to sing. Rebecca could do all that. We're doing some of the great things that Rubel wrote for June Christie, arranged for June Christie. And Becca will come right through, and we had a real short rehearsal with Becky, who has not seen this material since we did it with Rubel. So it's going to be fun. The musicians love to work with Becky, so it's going to be fun.
What are your thoughts on why Kenton brought in vocalists? It seems in some way contradictory. You have this intense brass section, very instrumental band, very, what was it for contrast? Was it because these vocalists are a very important part of that orchestra?
Well, yeah, Don Paul's the string conductor, they have a lot of life. When the Nico Day June came in, there was a vocalist in their intro. We all did intro her name, but Stan was not very happy with her. She was a good singer, but her voice didn't set to the orchestration that Stan had set up by the Rangers. Anita O'Day had that down. But when Anita O'Day was with Ken's band, the band was still pretty much what I would call a swing type band. They weren't getting into intricate numbers. And Stan, I tell you a story, which is pretty well known in all that documentaries on Stan. He wanted to get big sellers on instrumentals. His biggest sellers were Tampico and Her Tears Flow Like Wine, which was a punk song, but Anita O'Day made it. If you go to the early, you can't think you remember that. And Her Tears Flow Like Wine, it was played on radio day and night. It was one of the biggest sellers Stan ever had. He hated it. And his only instrumental that really did well, and no others ever did, was Eager Beaver. That's why Capitol kept him on contract. But you have to come in Capitol Records because they did not make money on most of his material, and they kept him on contract. So the head guys up there felt they loved Stan, they loved his vision, and the only reason he left the Capitol was because later in years, in the Beatle era, it was the Beatles that was contracted with Capitol, and all the other groups on that, they were making money for Capitol. They let the Kent music slide, really slide. They wouldn't reissue hardly anything. So he left to create his own recording company, Creative Records, which was on Crenshaw Boulevard in Hollywood. And that's where I had a chance to go to meet Kenton in person. You could actually meet him there. Anybody come off the street and just talk to him. So he began reissuing all his material, and it's all available now. Everything by Kenton is available now. So those of you that, and I hope tomorrow night we can inspire the audience who not into Kenton to go out and buy his material. And it sounds like it was written tomorrow. His material still sounds like it was written the next day. It's fresh to me, but I'm not a fanatic. And if you've been a Kenton follower, whether you think you're or not, you're a fanatic. And maybe hopefully tomorrow night there'll be people in the audience that come because somebody's bringing them, and they don't know too much about the Sand Kid. Only through Christy, because when she went out on her own with Pete Rubel's material. So whatever happens, we hope we open the door to new people living Mr. Kent.
Stan Kenton is hard to categorize, there's no question about that. I think it's going to go forward. We're still going to be working with that. That's why it's great you're bringing that. We've only got about 10 minutes left. I'd like to open questions up here to anyone in the audience that might have a question. You know, you've been listening to art for 3 decades. It can be about anything. You'd be happy to answer it. I'll get the question. This is a podcast, by the way. Oregon Music News is who is recording this, and you can listen to this. Again, Tom D'Antoni over there is a real driving force behind this, and this is a great thing. All these jazz
Tom
conversations.
D'Antoni also with KMHC, so it is a kind of KMHC night here.
Alumni night, yeah. Any questions? Anybody want to ask Art anything?
I have a question, Art. You talked about Stan's feelings about swing. I wanted to ask you about his feelings toward Bob. We were listening last night to Les Brown's band, 1949. They were playing Bob charts. Artie Shaw tried Bob. I've even heard you play some Tommy Dorsey arrangements that were Bob. Of course, the audiences didn't like it. It didn't last at all.
Now, great question. Tom trombonist.
Can you repeat the question? Paraphrase it for the microphone.
Asking about Bob in that era. You're right, there is a Stan Kenton, there is a Bob in that era. Stan didn't go with the tide. Right, when Bob came out, he was a dizzy, and I'm a Bob. I grew up in that era in LA. In fact, this is documented too. When the voting came in, I forget what age I was. This is not on LACC yet. We put Dizzy Gillespie's name on the ballot for president. And we had little keys. We walked around LA with little keys. And we actually had him on the ballot for president, and we're supposed for it. Anyway, again, Bob came in, and nobody could understand it. But you're right, great bands like Les Brown was probably one of the best dance bands because they appealed to not only jazz people, dancers too. Guys like Don Faber, of course, who was in the band, and Ted Ness came out of that band, went on to become good jazz stars. But Charlie Barnett adapted to Bob. Benny Goodman did for a short period of time. He hated Bob, and he didn't mind saying so, but his band kind of hurt him into doing it for Capitol, and he had one of the greatest Bob bands for about a year. But he got out of it real quickly because he didn't like Bob. And he said it wouldn't last. Like I said, rock and roll wouldn't last when it came in. But was I wrong in that way? I love bebop, and bebop is still played today by young musicians. If you go down some of the jam sessions, the Clyde Ronstein jam sessions, there are young people coming in and playing things that people don't understand. They're playing bop phrases, and I think maybe they don't understand that. But you pick things up. And right, Stan did not like bop. And if you listen, I like to listen to everything that's put out. That's been printable, and there's no bop phrases in this music. And when it's arranged with Bill Holman, Lenny Needhouse, Gene Rowland, who incidentally arranged Tampico, and he's the one that was instrumentally the man to bring in the mellophonians to Stan Kenton's band. But there is no bop in Stan's band. It's strange because of all the stuff he's put out, you won't hear bop phrases. He didn't like it. And he liked consonance material. And he did, and it's flat out stated, he was quoted, I didn't get quoted, but it was in one of the books on Stan, written by Audrey Cope, that he did not like to play dances. He only did that to keep the band alive.
Even the titles of music.
I said that.
Yeah, artistry and rhythm. That doesn't sound like that. Another question?
I believe it's a few years back I heard of the Stan Kenton, quote unquote, doing tours, and I believe that Gary Hobbs has played with that band, as well as a person I knew in Spokane named Bob Colonel, or he's at least arranged one. What is your attitude towards these, coining the phrase, the leftover band?
Go a little further. What do you mean the leftover band?
Well, I mean, Stan Kenton is gone, and probably most of his original musicians.
Oh, what's happening with the ones that are still alive that work with that?
Yeah. and
Oh, good
Are
question.
they making a good product?
Yeah, that's right. Gary was found at Monday Community College, and Stan loved the youth. He loved the youth, and he wanted them to carry things on. And, he would only, his music was all donated to North Texas State, and in his will, it stated nobody can have a ghost band. We could do tributes like we're going to be doing, but most of the musicians that were with his band are no longer around. His whole the great trauma conference, Patrick Burgess, my good friend Dick Shear, who I loved, are all gone. There really is no such thing except what Mike Fax is doing now. Great Mike Fax who worked with Stan carries what they call an alumni band. Those who work with band, even if they work with Stan for maybe a week or two, that's called an alumni already. Mike picks that up periodically and travels with it, but these are different days, and you cannot get the backing to carry a band like that around anymore. So it's just like what we're doing here, and I thank Don Lukoff, the director of the Jazz Festival, for allowing us to do this, because play Stan Kenton music, and the bottom line of any festival is the dollars at the bottom. You know, not how great the music is. That's what today is all about. And for clubs, even like Ivories or any club, you can't maintain a club, even though you want the greatest jazz stars in here, unless you get the patrons to come in. And sadly, that's what's happening. I guess you brought another thing to my mind too. It's what's happening in school too. But first thing cut is the music program. So the big one's been cut at Miami Community College. And when I came here, that was the music program. It's all been cut. Susie Jones, who ran a great lab band there, is now my second alto player. And Dave Bardul is no longer, in a sense, no longer at the college. He brought the great Genesis vocal group to me. So, good question. The leftover, there was really not a leftover. There's musicians that are probably still alive that can't play anymore. And on the big sessions that they have in Southern California, which I haven't been to yet, which Tom is going to, good friend Jack Todd here from California. He came up, he's gone to those where all the Kenton leftovers, like you said, are still there.
Yeah.
Retired, not necessarily playing anymore. And like Jack told me, when they do a Kenton tribute, the younger guys that are able to play this stuff now. So they'll never get another Kenton band. But there'll be tribute bands like ours, and we hope that the tribute bands do it well. No one will do it like, you can't cover up, you can't do Glenn Miller like he did, even though the band had a lot of flaws. This is the early band of Glenn Miller. They weren't great musicians, but there was something, there was chemistry. And we played Glenn Miller in our band. The Kenton band, like again, if these musicians are schooled, the young ones coming out of college, and the best band, I think the best musicians that can play it are coming out of North Texas State. But there are no such thing as a leftovers. It's either a Mike Fax alumni band until they disappear. I don't know if it will be carried on like other music, you know, like the Four Freshmen, who are not the original Four Freshmen anymore. If you're a freshman fan, who I love, fell in love with in California, they're great. They still keep that sound going, but for those that might want to know, Bob Flanagan died, who was the co-owner of it. The license is in his wife's hand now, Mary. She's very ill, and I'm told by some of the people connected with the Four Freshmen Society that if she passes away and the license is not dedicated to somebody, they can't use the name anymore. So there'll be no more Four Freshmen. So, hope that answers the question on that.
I apologize for the formulation leftover.
And then Gary, you're talking about is Gary Hawk.
Gary, yeah. Oh, great. You know, as you know, Gary still do great.
Yeah.
The small groups.
Well, he plays with you sometimes.
He
Yeah.
played with us at the Evergreen Museum 3 months ago, right?
He shined in September, yeah. One final question, we only have a couple minutes left. What do you want people to take away from your show tomorrow night? When they leave, and there's going to be about 600 of us,
Well,
what do you want them to be thinking about?
I want you to think, if you're going to be there tomorrow night, or anybody tomorrow night, what I would like on the tombstone. Damn, we had the best band in Oregon. You know, the best local band in Oregon. But I want Stan Kitten fans to say, God, that was as close to Kitten as you could do with it with a non-Kitten band. That would be an honor, you know. There will be another Kitten somewhere down the line. There will not be a Kitten band. There will be another Charlie Parker somewhere. That's why we need to keep the school programs going. Kids need a place to play. They need a place where they can jam, where liquor is served. Like I grew up in California. I was going to Hollywood High School, and you could go down to a place called the Lighthouse, where they had a spot for kids to sit, another spot where the adults meet with the liquor, and you could walk in and see people like Frank Rossellino, Stan Kitten there, off with his band, Connie Cannulli, Pete Cannulli, and we don't have that today in Oregon. And, but the main thing is, if you have children, all of you here are still in school, try to support the music programs. Very, very important. And I just hope that those of you that will be here tomorrow, we don't let you down in the music we play, and we don't let him down.
That'll do it. I'd like to thank all the sponsors, U.S. Bank, Alaska Airlines, Ori Music News. Thank you for being here recording this. Ivories. Art Abrams, it's been a real
Thank you for being here.
See you tomorrow.
Support thank you. Thank you, Mr. D'Antoni, back there, and your friend.
But he's got his foot wrapped around the cord.
Okay.
Oh,
This is really clean. You want me to just bounce it out? Yeah, this one.
everybody eat.
My goal was to make it.
This one he's saying that. I said this is
Well, I mean, that's the biggest thing in this game.
The first two, we did
It's hard, but you know, so dialed in doing this for so many years. Get it on record.
out there, didn't get it. Appreciate the information.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I knew what you meant. I answer to a lot of things.